So we're getting into the mid 80s now, and traditional hockey kind of disappearing on some level. The Islanders were seen as your traditional hockey, your hard nosed, tough team, where almost everybody had 100 penalty minutes and they could all fight you into the ground. The Oilers weren't exactly that team, but they weren't really a weak team either, because back then you just had a lot of guys who fought and a lot of guys who took penalties. And it's just how it worked. But during the regular season, the Minnesota North Stars win the Norris division, the weakest division of the four, 39, 31, and 10, followed by St. Louis at 32, 41, and 7, followed by Detroit 31, 42, and 7, Chicago 30, 40, and 8. So 68 points right here, 69 points here, 71 points here. Not fantastic totals by any stretch. Toronto can't reach that. They're 26, 45, and 9. So we are in the lowest point of the Toronto Maple Leafs' existence at this stage. The Smythe, and I know there's people who are going to say, oh, well, recently they've been worse. Yes and no. This was just meandering and plotting, and it's sad. And at least when they came out of their latest rebuild, at least it was labeled a rebuild. This is just sad. The Smythe division is led by the Edmonton Oilers with a 57, 18, and 5 record. Remember, the Oilers got swept in the Stanley Cup final by the Islanders the year before, and they were mad. And they made it very clear that was not acceptable. Sometimes getting destroyed like they did in the finals in 1983 is the best thing for them. The Calgary Flames, 34, 32, and 14. They are the only other team in the Smythe division above 500. Vancouver, 32, 39, and 9. Is Vancouver good? Not really, but they were better than Winnipeg and LA. Winnipeg, 31, 38, and 11, and LA, 23, 44, and 13. So miserable times for King fans then, too. The Adams division, Boston leads that one, 49, 25, and 6. Barely ahead of Buffalo at 48, 25, and 7. The Quebec Nordiques, 42, 28, and 10. And those wily Montreal Canadiens, who I think finished 35, 40, and 5 on purpose, so they play Boston in the playoffs. The Hartford Whalers, 28, 42, and 10, again decide to sit out the playoffs. It's amazing these teams that end up moving have bad records for the most part. Anyways, the Patrick division is led by the New York Islanders, who are bound and determined to get that 5th straight Stanley Cup. 50, 26, and 4 is their record. The Washington Capitals are now becoming a solid, fantastically good team, and David Poile gets the credit for that. 48, 27, and 5, and their coach, Brian Murray, gets that credit too. The Flyers, 44, 26, and 10, followed by the Rangers at 42, 29, and 9. The New Jersey Devils, 17, 56, and 7, are closely followed by the Pittsburgh Penguins at 16, 58, and 6. At some point during the season, both New Jersey and Pittsburgh decided we want the number 1 draft pick. That number 1 draft pick is going to be Mario Lemieux. They realize they're not going to make the playoffs, not in this division. All 4 other teams in the division are very good. And they realize that Mario Lemieux will make a difference. He is a franchise player. His totals that he's putting up in the queue remind everyone of a young Wayne Gretzky. So the idea is, well, this guy's going to be another Gretzky. We've got to do whatever we've got to do to get to him. Which means trading good players for not much in return, if anything. Means suiting up less than your best. Putting players out there that probably shouldn't be in the NHL. And sitting guys who should be, or just moving them for nothing. And Pittsburgh wins this. Now, if the NHL was really going to get upset about teams pulling the tank for players, they should have got mad back then. Because this was the most blatant example. The weird thing, of course, is the year before this, both Pittsburgh and New Jersey are miserably bad as well. But that wasn't on purpose. This one was clearly on purpose. And it was, if you're winning games, well, you're on your way out of town. The only example I can think of in recent history was during the Connor McDavid draft year, when Buffalo was moving out any goaltender that looked good. And eventually they brought in Lindback. And to me, it was obvious that Lindback was brought in because he had the worst stats of anybody in the league that year. And then Lindback actually played pretty well for Buffalo. And that I was glad that these players had pride and said, I'm going out there and playing as well as I can. I don't care why I'm here. I'm here. I want to still have a job next year. So that's how that story ends up. July 6, 1983, Jeff Courtnall signs as a free agent with the Boston Bruins. August 17th, 1983, Dirk Graham is signed by the Minnesota North Stars. So while scouting is getting better, there are still guys like that as undrafted players, get signed as free agents. October 18th, 1983, Larry Murphy's traded to the Capitals. Brian Engblom's part of the package going back to the Kings. Adding Larry Murphy adds that offensive dimension to the blue line. So David Poile made it respectable, and then he made it even better. January 4th, 1984, the Edmonton Oilers beat the Minnesota North Stars 12-8 in what was the highest scoring hockey game of the modern era. So after they brought in the forward pass, after they brought in offsides, that's the highest score you've got. January 27th, 1984, Gretzky, 51 game point streak. 51. And in those 51 games, he scored 153 points. This was the season he scored 205 points altogether. So, pretty good year for Gretzky. Not too bad. All right. And that's kind of average for him. Remember, the year before he had 196. This year was 205. The year before was 212. And the year after this, it was 215. So 200 points is right around average for him. And yeah. And then Steve Penny, as a rookie, comes in from Montreal and kind of pulls a Ken Dryden almost. There's something about rookies in Montreal playing well in the playoffs and doing something special. And it almost always seems to involve them screwing over Boston somehow. Your first team All-Stars. And I have to say, the book that I used, which is Total NHL, had yesterday's first and second team All-Stars completely wrong. And I never thought of it because the magazines had typos here and there and things that I've corrected which are minor. But the entire first and second team All-Stars being wrong, that's news to me. This year's first team All-Stars, Gretzky, Bossy, Goulet, Langway, Bourque, Barrasso, and net. Tom Barrasso comes in as a hero for the Buffalo Sabres. Your second team All-Stars, Trottier, there's Curry, Messier, Coffey, Potvin, Pat Reagan in Washington. So Pat Reagan, who I had liked in Calgary, and he was kind of one of my favorite goalies in Washington, kind of becomes a big deal as well. So that was a fun thing for me back then as a little kid, and well, at this point, yeah, I'm still 11 when the playoffs for this year roll around. So yeah, still a kid, and yeah, Pat Reagan, one of my favorites. Your Hart Trophy winner and your Art Ross winner, Wayne Gretzky. So Gretzky had a dominant year. Rod Langway wins the Norris again. So that's 2 in a row. Tom Barrasso wins the Calder in Buffalo. The Selke goes to Doug Jarvis of the Washington Capitals. The Vezina goes to Tom Barrasso. Your Jennings Award winners for lowest goals against, Al Jensen and Pat Reagan, the Washington Capitals. The Adams for best coach of the year goes to Brian Murray of the Washington Capitals. So the Capitals had an excellent year. They're finally not a bad team. This finally happened. The Lady Byng goes to Mike Bossy. The Masterton goes to Brad Park in Detroit. So right near the end of his career, Brad Park gets the Masterton Trophy. The Pearson Award goes to Gretzky. The Conn Smythe ends up going to Mark Messier, which is kind of surprising considering the numbers. You would think it would go to Gretzky, but no. Conn Smythe, after the Conn Smythe, the Patrick Award for growing the game in the States goes to Art Ross and John A. Ziegler. John Ziegler, of course, the president of the NHL at the time, and this was towards the end of his time as president. Nowhere near as controversial as the current commissioner is, but there were some Ziegler detractors for sure. The number one pick, of course, as I said, Mario Lemieux, who went on to have a decent career, 915 games, 690 goals, 1,033 assists, 1,723 points. And, of course, the big thing with Lemieux is if not for a back injury, if not for a shortened career from that, he would have scored well over 2,000 points. And there wouldn't be any debate about whether or not Lemieux and Gretzky were head and shoulders above everybody else. And really, for those of us that grew up with them, it's not close. The playoffs. So again, if you're a Bruins fan, repeat after me. Montreal Boston is a bad matchup for Boston. Boston gets swept in the first round. Montreal had 75 points. Boston had 104. Boston gets swept because of Steve Penny. The Quebec Nordiques sweep Buffalo. So those are two upsets right there. Tom Barrasso gets swept. So no Boston Buffalo in the next round. The New York Islanders beat the New York Rangers in 5. So again, the Rangers play the Islanders and lose. So the Rangers, apparently that's a bad matchup for the Rangers. The Washington Capitals sweep Philly. So Washington's going, you know what? We're not just a regular season team this year. We're going to be a playoff team. And, I'm sure there were those that were kind of excited in Washington that year. And this was a point in time where I became a big Capitals fan. This is before I was a huge Bruins fan. I was not a huge Bruins fan at this point. I was a fan of the Capitals, of the Canucks, and of the North Stars. And to some extent, the Flames. Although, we'll get to them. Minnesota beat Chicago in 5. St. Louis beat Detroit in 4. So these are still best of 5 series. Edmonton, 3-game sweep over the Winnipeg Jets. And the Calgary Flames beat Vancouver in 4. So as much as I want to cheer for Calgary, it's starting to get aggravating. Okay, I like Calgary, but they got to stop beating the Canucks. They're not going to stop beating the Canucks. Division finals, Montreal wins the Battle of Quebec in 6, and it's a full-on hate fest at this point. Montreal and Quebec really don't like each other. The New York Islanders beat Washington, or the Islanders beat Washington in 5. So the Capitals have come a far distance from where they were, not far enough as the Islanders knock them out. Now keep in mind, that's a lot of series that the New York Islanders have won. It's 18 straight series at this point that the Islanders have won. Minnesota beats St. Louis in 7. Edmonton beats Calgary in 7. And that's kind of where my dislike for Edmonton starts getting kind of big, because I really wanted Calgary to knock out Edmonton. Your conference finals, the New York Islanders beat Montreal in 6. So Steve Penny gets the Montreal Canadiens within 2 games of the Stanley Cup final in 1984. And in 2 years, he will not be Montreal's goaltender. The Edmonton Oilers sweep Minnesota. So as excited as I may have been as a Minnesota North Stars fan at the time, the Oilers say, yeah, that's enough of that crap, and they take them out. So again, one way to make me dislike a team is for them to take out my favorite team, or one of my favorites. The Stanley Cup Finals, the Islanders did take care of Edmonton pretty handily in 83. 84, what the Oilers do in Game 1 is they go into Nassau and they win by shutout. The Islanders won in Edmonton in Game 1 in 1983 via a shutout. So, Grant Fuhr pitching a shutout in that one, kind of significant. Now, Game 2, the Islanders win 6-1. So now it's a series, but the next 3 are in Edmonton. They do a 2-3-2 format that year. 2-3-2 format works fine in baseball and basketball and other sports, but man, in hockey, you just get a split and then you just don't lose at home, and it seems to work pretty well. The 2-3-2 format has been an option, as far as I know, that has not been exercised since 1994, and this is why. They get home to Edmonton and they win 7-2, 7-2, 5-2. So there's a reason why yesterday's video I said the Islanders squashed the Oilers, because they did. And the Oilers needed it. The Oilers needed it, and they focused on that all year. They got 57 wins. One of the best regular seasons ever. And they put up a ton of goals. I'm pretty sure they were over 400 goals for again that year. They tightened up a little bit defensively. And they did it with the New York Islanders in mind. The New York Islanders, remember, had won 19 series to this point in a row. This was their 5th straight Stanley Cup final, and they were tired. And they would admit, after the Oilers knocked them out, that they had played a lot of hockey. They were really pretty beat up and pretty tired. And players from that Islanders dynasty, I think with the amount of Stanley Cup playoff runs that they had, I think it shortened a couple of careers along the way. But it was an impressive dynasty, and I don't think there's been one that's been as impressive. These guys are starting a new one in today's video, but they never had 4 in a row. They never had that. 5 out of 7 is still pretty darn good. Not going to take anything away from them there, but they did have years where they would fail to get out of the second round, and that gave them that little bit of extra rest that the Islanders never had on their run. In the playoffs, your goals leader is Jari Kurri with 14. Your assist leader is Gretzky with 22. Gretzky leads in points with 35. Your wins leader, Billy Smith, actually leads in wins with 12. Grant Fuhr has 11. And the other wins were provided by Andy Moog. It's the start of an impressive run by Edmonton, and we will see a gradual decline for the New York Islanders from here. But like I said, they played a ton of hockey. And this is starting to get into an era where things are a little more... There's less chance of a dynasty at this stage of the game. We're already getting into that up to that point. The Islanders are the last, in my eyes, really insanely good dynasty. The Oilers were fantastic, but you always with the Oilers thought, yeah, they don't really play defense though. And Fear's good, but he allows all those goals, and is that because the defense isn't very good in front of him? And you always felt like maybe they were vulnerable. They win 5 out of 7, so in the end, we feel like fools when they end up winning anyways. But the Islanders never looked vulnerable. They just looked incredibly good the whole way along. So there you go, 1983-84 season, and your winners, not the New York Islanders, the Edmonton Oilers. So it stays with a team that wears blue, just a Canadian one instead. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. As always, don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you're browsing your way through. You just happened upon this video. And hey, the Oilers, they squashed right back. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you again soon.